Hello everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman and this is your look at the astrology for March 3rd through 9th, 2025. So yes, we are in March, one of those months in the astrology of 2025, something that I talked about in my webinar that I did at right before the beginning of the year, and how March has two eclipses. And it even has, although it's really scooting in at the end of the month, we even have Neptune going into Aries, another conversation for another time, but it is a big month, even just with the eclipses, because eclipses, they mark changes of time, changes of the hour. Remember, astrology is time. It's how we live time. It's metaphoric time. And eclipses are like the engine of time. They really move events. They move things in our life. And so for you, if you haven't already, it's just to begin to listen for what's the story arc happening right now, because there is something that's happening. It might not be quite so obvious, but this idea that eclipses are really moving a very particular part of your life. But we're not there yet this week, even though it was really this past weekend. We have Venus retrograde. Venus retrograde sort of picks up where Mars left off. I realize we are sort of one after the other in terms of retrogrades, because next week we'll even have Mercury retrograde. But don't worry, retrogrades are just a time to go back, to review. It's the yin to the yang. It's the receptive to the active. So having said all that, just for those that don't know who I am, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm an astrologer located in Maryland, at least presently. And every week we gather live to look at the astrology. You hear me say it every week. The astrology is 50%, you are the other 50%. And I say that just so that we sort of shift our mindset so that we can be more participatory in the astrology. Because astrology, if it's time and the structure of time, well, how are you living time? Certainly when we get to this time of the year, we are in Pisces season. We even had a Pisces new moon just a few days ago. This was on February 27th. And this Pisces new moon and even Pisces season, it brings us to the end of the zodiac. This week, next week, we sort of have these movements. I would say even into the end of March, we have these movements back and forth between the end of the zodiac, Pisces, and the beginning of the zodiac, Aries, because we have Mercury in Aries as of today. We have Venus in Aries, and Venus has turned retrograde on March 1st. Mercury will go back to Pisces. Venus will go back to Pisces. They turn around, then they come back. It's kind of like even in May, we have Saturn going into Aries, and it's back in Pisces on September 1st. So there's something about this year that's sort of coming to the end of something, starting something, but then going back to it. So we're in a little bit of a liminal space, perhaps, and it's to see how these retrogrades start to weave a story for you. So this week, again, we have Mercury in Aries. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. Let's sort of go back to something that I said a few moments ago. We're in Pisces season. Pisces is the end of the zodiac. We've lived a life. We've made one cycle. And Pisces, as the sign of the two fishes, talks about the duality of life, the duality of creation, the duality of both the material and the spiritual, this idea of what are we nourishing in our lives. And then the whole cycle starts all over again when the sun goes into Aries. And this year it'll be March 20th that the sun goes into Aries. And so it's meant to be a contemplative season, but the planets are moving, and what are called the personal planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars are personal planets. They're ahead of the sun. We'll take Mars out of the mix for a moment. Mercury and Venus are always never too far away from the sun, and that's why they turn retrograde the most frequently. For example, so Mercury, it's in Aries as of today, so we've got one foot in something new. Mercury, it turns retrograde on the 15th of March, so that's next week. I think that's next Saturday, if I'm remembering correctly, or next Friday. And so there's this idea that we are in something again, but we're also going back to something. Again, be in the listening, be in the reflection. Pisces as a water sign, it's meant to be intuitive. It's meant to be dreamy. It's meant to be quiet. And then when we're in the quiet of Pisces season, even if it's our dreams, it's to hear something. It's to feel something. It's to discover something. A little voice. Pisces season is a good season to get back to who we are, to get back to our internal life, or even our internal voice, meaning the voice that gives us our guidance so that we can know which way to go. So let's go back to Venus. Venus as a personal planet, it's in Aries. Venus is what we love. It's what we value. It's what we spend time and money on. It's relationships. Venus is opposite in terms of the structure of the sky and the structure of the zodiac. It's opposite Mars. Venus reminds us that life isn't just about us and what we want. It's about other people. It's about negotiation and compromise. And without Venus, we wouldn't be able to really see things from the perspective of other people. That's why Venus is a relationship planet. That's why it's a planet of negotiation and compromise. And it does this dance, so to speak, perhaps not a dance in the sky, but it does a dance in the astrology between Aries and Libra. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. I want, individuality, power, going after what you want. There's a lot of that Marsy energy in Aries because it's ruled by Mars. But in Libra, Venus is, we have to compromise. We have to negotiate. That's the back and forth of life, and Venus can sort of smooth over the rough edges of Mars. That said, Venus is in Aries right now, so it's not in the sign that it rules. Classically speaking, it is quote unquote debilitated. That's an important thing to understand, but it's not a fate in the sense that Venus is just working like Mars at the moment. Venus still negotiates, Venus still compromises, but it's using the energy of Mars to do so at the moment. So if Venus is in Aries, Venus is in a sign that talks about the I, the individuality, the going after what you want. And Venus, I don't know if you know this, but Venus in its, it has an 8-year cycle. So what Venus is doing right now in the sky is almost to the same degree as Venus retrograde. I think it was 2017. I think it was March of 2017. So in the cycle, over 8 years, with the Venus retrogrades every 18 months, Venus draws, it's as if it, not as if you were to plot it out, it actually does draw a rosette pattern in the sky. And so that's why Venus is the 5-pointed star, the 5-pointed petal. And that star, whether it's the morning star or the evening star, Venus right now is the evening star. And even if you look in the west right now, or perhaps right after sunset, you can see Venus in the sky. Venus is very bright right now because Venus is preparing to make its retrograde. And Venus to go from the evening star to the morning star over a process of about 50 days, if I'm remembering my astronomy correctly, Venus does that process of going from one state to the other. There it is again, that duality. And so this reminds us that with life and the material world, because Venus is the material world, Venus is the ruler of Taurus, we can create a material world that is for denser energies. That's the 5-pointed star pointing down, or we can do the 5-pointed star pointing up towards the light, for example. A little bit of an esoteric look at Venus retrograde. Venus does spend 40 days retrograde. I realize that amount of time has a lot of deep symbolism to it. And then Venus will go back to Pisces. I can't remember the date that it goes back to Pisces, but it will turn direct, probably in early April. It will turn direct on April 12th. at 24 degrees of Pisces. There's a lot of things happening late in Pisces. Right now, we've got Saturn in Pisces. Saturn, I think, is at like 21 degrees, 22 degrees of Pisces. We got Neptune right at the end of Pisces. The sun is going to be kind of scooting up that way over the next couple of weeks. We had an eclipse there on September 17th of last year. We'll have another eclipse in that area September 22nd of this year. So if you've got stuff in the last 10 degrees, the mutable signs, especially my Pisces and my Virgo people, and a lot of you, just statistically speaking, have Virgo rising because it's one of the most common rising signs. It means things are happening right now in your life. Go back and look at what was happening in, say, 2015-16, 2006, 2007, 1997, 1998, because those were the years that we had the eclipses last in Pisces and Virgo, as we do now. So with Venus retrograde, from a day-to-day level, there's this common wisdom in astrology that we shouldn't make big investments, that maybe an ex-partner or an ex-lover will surface. I don't know if that's necessarily true. That's for you to sort of keep an eye out for who's popping up in your life during Venus retrograde. But it is a time to review how we are using our Venus. Are we valuing ourselves? Are we valuing other people? Are we listening to people? Are we compromised? Are we more in what we want versus listening to what other people want? Perhaps with Venus in Aries, we need to get back to our desires, kind of like what was happening with Mars retrograde. If you recall, Mars was retrograde from December 6th until just this past February 23rd. And so Mars, like Venus, is a personal planet. Mars is our power, our drive. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning. It's what we go after. And we all were doing this work on Mars, on our Mars, in that sense of that archetype and that energy since December. We still are in a way, because Mars it hasn't gone back to where it was in the sky when it started its retrograde. That won't be, I think, until the beginning of May. So to go to Venus for a moment, Venus is talking to Mars. Why? Because Venus is in the sign that Mars rules. And so Mars is over in Cancer. So this is saying that there's something that's happening right now between Aries, the sign that's about the I and the individual and new beginnings and taking action. But Venus, what we value, perhaps relationships, and also family. Why family? Because Cancer is the sign of home and family. It's emotional connections. It's the past. It's memory. It's its roots. Its foundations. So there is this connection that's happening between, am I being valued? Or what is my value? Or how am I investing in things and how that's connecting to the past? And so that might be one of the ways in which this retrograde is showing up. To go back to Pisces season, and speaking of family, Pisces, the energy, this is the whole thing about astrology, it really runs on rulerships. The ruler of Pisces season is Jupiter. And Jupiter has been in Gemini since the end of May of 2024. Gemini is Pisces' fourth sign. So it's kind of like saying that while we're in Pisces season, there is this direct connection between Pisces and its fourth sign, home, family, roots, foundation, because in astrology, the fourth sign of the zodiac is Cancer. Cancer is home, Cancer is family. So this is a season that takes us into about March 20th, when the sun goes into Aries, where a lot of the energy is maybe, depending on who you are, focused on family, home environment, your living situation, but perhaps even past and memories, and even deeper questions about where is home and who is home. And for some people, it's how do I get my needs met? How do I feel safe and secure? So that might be one of the sort of major themes, because astrology, it's time We have collective time, but of course we all have our personal time as well. So all these different movements with the retrogrades, it just means that there's a lot of things that we need to look at the moment, perhaps collectively, certainly personally. Mars, again, it's to have done that work on our desires, our powers. Mars is still in this long opposition to Pluto. This takes us into the beginning of May. So we're really having to do some reformation and transformation, especially as we get into the end of April. Venus retrograde, we need to look at what we value, how we connect to one another, how we invest our time and things, and maybe even money and income, because Venus, again, is a planet of our material plane. Mercury turning retrograde, while Mercury retrograde is quite common, it happens every three months, there is this need to reevaluate things in terms of thinking about things differently, making different choices, seeing things from different perspectives, because Mercury is the planet of choice. Of course, it's the planet of communication and voice and how we think and listen and learn, but it is because it is the ruler of Gemini. It's about duality and the choices that we make. A lot of things are up for review right now. Perhaps that's no surprise considering everything that's going on, but a lot of things are up for review. And so the eclipses will add to this. What will it add? I'm not sure. We will see. But for those who are Pisces, are Virgo, these are big times for you, even if it doesn't quite seem like that at the moment. Even if you're Gemini and Sagittarius, you're getting what's called the square with these eclipses. And so things may be shifting and moving. Just look who's in the news. There's been a lot of Sagittarius in the news. I was looking at the Oscar winners. And funny enough, that I didn't do like a full look at things, but people had a lot of mutable moons, like moons in Sagittarius, moons in Pisces, moons in Virgo. Adrian Brody is a perfect example. And this, as an aside, is just a perfect example of how eclipses can even mark achievements. I know sometimes we think of eclipses like, oh, wait, what's going to happen? But it is a time that can also talk about achievements. So having said all that, I am doing a webinar on Wednesday. So in a couple days at 8 p.m. Eastern, it will be about 2 hours, and it is my deep dive on eclipses. I love eclipses. I'm saying that as an astrologer. I don't love eclipses, but as an astrologer, they are what really marks a time of our lives. They mark achievements, as I was sort of talking about with the Oscars. They mark the births and marriages, moves, changes in the narratives of our lives. And really, when you plot out your life, you will see eclipses as sort of moving things along. That's why I call them the engine of time. So yes, please join me on Wednesday live 8 p.m. Eastern. It is recorded for replay. I know we are across the world, so can't always listen live or watch live. If you go to empoweringastrology.com, you can also get in the show notes the link for the webinar. I hope you can join me live. So having said that, let's it's a quiet, I'm putting this in air quotes, it's a quiet week. There's actually not a lot going on, except we are 1 week away from a lunar eclipse, and we will get to about on Thursday, we'll get to what's called the opening first quarter moon. This is the first quarter moon after the new moon, but also the first quarter moon is 1 week before the eclipse. So we could see some eclipse energy this week, but that said, just Mercury going into Aries this week. And I think there's like a sextile between Mercury and Pluto, and maybe even a sunshine Mars. So it's just like, maybe we need like a little bit of a quieter sky, because next week, and even as we get into that Aries solar eclipse on March 29th, April is going to be very interesting. Question mark, period. So having said all that, let's look at each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. Aries, so Mars is your planet. We've been talking about this for a while, and Mars is in Cancer. So just a lot of focus in the first half of the year for you because Mars is in Cancer from what? January 6th all the way to, April 18th, I think is the date. And that puts about 4 months, not including 2024, where there's a lot of focus on your home environment. There's a lot of focus on your living situation. There's a lot of focus with family. Of course, we all have different lives, but for some of you, it literally is about something going on in your living situation. For some Aries or Aries risings, it's more abstract in the sense that it's getting into deeper emotions, because Cancer, certainly Cancer as a sign and an archetype, gets into very deep places. Am I safe? Do I have enough? Where is home? Who is home? I'm saying this in case this is coming up. Mars, even though it turned direct on February 23rd, it's still kind of, slowly gaining some speed after its retrograde. That said, this is still Pisces season. This is still a season that brings you to the end of your personal calendar. This is a season where, especially with that Pisces new moon on the 27th, so just a few days ago, February 27th, it's putting a lot of energy into your last sign, whether it's to let something go, whether it's to complete a great chapter, whether it's to focus on your spiritual life, whether it's to meditate more, for example. But it's bringing up a lot of deeper emotional questions, spiritual questions, and I think that is playing off even on that Mars in Cancer. I've said this before, but it's just to sort of continue to give you a heads up, because Mars, it's going to go back into Leo on, I think it's April 18th, and then it makes an opposition to Pluto, and this will be on April 26th. So there's kind of some intense energy as we get into the middle of into April, and certainly the end of April. So something is being asked of you to change something. Of course, we're all different people, but it's to really sit and to listen to what is coming up and what you can sort of sense and feel and intuit. It needs to change, and you need to let it go, for example. Oh, I will add Aries, that Venus, it is retrograde. Venus is a relationship planet. And so this retrograde is something for you to pay attention to. It's not just romantic relationships, capital R relationships, it's really all relationships. And so this is a period where it's a reevaluation of needs and wants. It's a reevaluation of power, a power dynamic within relationships, whether that's a particular relationship or relationships in general. Taurus, Venus is your planet, and Venus is just turned retrograde. So it's doing its retrograde in something called your 12th sign. And the 12th sign represents the part of your life that is about what's outside this world. What do you mean, what's outside this world? So we all have our regular lives. We pay our bills, we go to work, we have a career, we have relationships. We even have hopes and dreams and aspirations. But the 12th represents a space that is fundamentally about what is beyond your material life. It could be something as simple as listening to your dreams, your intuition, a time for you to really cultivate something within. Because the role of the 12th is to help us, I think on a higher level, the role of the 12th is to help us to find substance. To find the substance of our lives. And the substance is what fills our material lives, for example. So this might be a time where deeper existential questions are coming up, where you're trying to reprioritize things in your life. For some Tauruses, maybe you're just feeling very tired. You need to rest, because sometimes the 12th is where we need to rest. We need to recuperate. And with Venus also retrograde, it's going to spend a fair bit, probably the next couple of weeks, in the 12th before going back to Pisces. We'll talk about that later. But Pisces is an area where a lot of things are happening right now. We just had that Pisces new moon on the 27th. Pisces is your 11th sign. It's about your community. It's about your friends. It's about your social networks. But it's also about looking towards the future. Keep in mind, Taurus, you have had Saturn in this space since March of 2023. Saturn has been systematically asking you over the last 2 years, who are your friends? Who are your friends? Who are not your friends? It's a bit black and white for Saturn. This has been a time to really clear out periphery friends, to clear out people who are just not a support for you in the future. But it's also to build connection and relationship and to even build solid connection. For some Tauruses, there's been a time about building community, really finding your place and even your people in the world. That said, with that Pisces new moon, and certainly with a lot of activity there right now, Venus even returning to this space, I forget, some point in March or maybe beginning of April, it is to return to a space that is about investing in the people who you really want to be in your community. Gemini. So Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is in Aries. So the energy of your sign is being pulled over now, because Mercury has just gone into Aries, into something called your 11th sign. The 11th is about the future. It's about looking ahead. It's a space where you have almost nearly come to the end of your personal year. Your personal year isn't just your birthday, but your personal year is the Mercury kind of moving the energy of your sign around the chart. With Mercury in Aries now, you may feel more emboldened, more inspired, more empowered, more loud, more brave, more courageous. Sometimes Mercury in Aries has a lot to say. It's not a diplomat, but with Mercury pointing over to Mars and Cancer. Why am I saying pointing over to Mars and Cancer? Because the energy of Aries, because the ruler of Aries is Mars, so the energy goes over to where Mars is presently. That's still in Cancer. And for you, Cancer is your second sign of money and income. So this Mercury in Aries is also talking to bigger questions about the future, but also what do you want to invest in? Like your material future, like what do you need? What do you value? And maybe, especially with Venus retrograde now, you need to think about what you value. That said, there's a lot of things happening in your 10th sign of career. We've got Saturn there. We've got, who else is there? Mercury left, we have Neptune, and we even have the Sun, the 10th. So this is a time that just continues, especially I think it's either next week or the week after the Sun and Saturn meet up, that is increasingly asking more responsibility and more accountability for you. It depends on who you are, but Saturn is Saturn. Saturn is saying it's time to take things seriously. It's time to step in a role. It's time to put things in order. It's time to be the adult or the parent. And maybe even, depending on who you are, it's time to begin to answer a question that Saturn has been asking you the past couple of years. What do you want to be when you grow up? Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and this week it's going from about Taurus to Leo. So Taurus for you, Cancer, is something called your 11th sign. Am I doing that correctly? Yep, I'm doing that correctly. So as you start the week, you're looking ahead, you're thinking about the future, you're looking towards friends and community, and by the middle of the week, especially when the moon goes into Gemini on Wednesday, it's a time, Wednesday, Thursday is a time of rest, and this even takes you into the beginning of Friday. The weekend, especially when the moon goes into Cancer on Friday, it is a reset, it's new beginnings, and so that's sort of the general movement of your personal chart right now, because the moon takes about 2-3 days to go through a zodiac sign. That said, it is Pisces season. Pisces is a fellow water sign. So water is about feeling and memory and connection. And Pisces for you is a sign that tries to point you towards the world. It is to make your world bigger. It is to think about big questions, to travel, to explore, to focus on your education, to figure out what you stand for and what you believe in. With the new moon that we just had, there is also a focus, depending on the Cancer, about broadcast and sharing your ideas and getting out there in the world. We have Mars direct. It's been direct the past couple of weeks, so Mars continues to be direct in your sign. And when Mars is in your sign, you typically either have a lot of energy, a lot of drive, a lot of power. You perhaps don't feel like negotiating. It's more about what you want, what you need. Give this energy an outlet, because this, Mars is very physical. When it doesn't have an outlet, it can get cranky, it can sort of get frustrated. But if you give it an outlet towards something, Mars will be very happy. Mars also is talking to Mercury, which is now in Aries. We got Mercury's in Aries. What else is in Aries? Nothing else is in Aries right now. But we will have an eclipse in Aries at the end of the month, and I think Mars is sort of talking to your Mercury, and it's thinking like, what do I want in my career? What do I want my next steps to be? Maybe you're thinking about choices, and I think even with Mars direct in Cancer, it's time to take action, especially as you get into the Sun in Aries. This will be on March 20th. It's time to take action. It's time to move forward. So there's just this movement of energy towards the top of your chart, and maybe what's been happening over the past few months and even the past couple of years, you've needed either to focus on education, or you've needed to focus more on bigger, like the concepts, like what do I want my career to be? What do I want my focus to be? But now the energy in 2025 is, okay, it's time to be that. So see how that is relevant for you. But nevertheless, this is a time where there's just a lot of drive, a lot of power, a lot of motivation, and all of this is preparing you for that eclipse to come on March 29th. Leo, the sun is your planet, and the sun is in the 8th. We talked about this last week, and I think even the week before. The 8th is the space in anybody's personal astrology where we need to do a lot of soul searching. We need to face ourselves. You're like, I don't want that. But that's the thing about life. If we don't look at ourselves, if we don't search within, if nothing happens, if every day is the same, do we grow? Absolutely not. So the 8th has been this just natural time for you to do a lot of emotional heavy lifting. This is building on the fact that Saturn has been here for the past couple of years. And so I think with the sun there, I think with upcoming eclipses, it's now to start to see what this work over the past couple of years is starting to build and start to make for you. That said, Pisces is just in general for you a very introspective time. Maybe even with the sun in Pisces, Jupiter is in your 11th. It could be about groups and connections. It could be about community. It could even be about looking towards the future and really thinking, sometimes we have to sort of search ourselves and search our fears and search our insecurities so that we can align towards the future that we're trying to create. With Mars now direct, Mars is still in something called your 12th, and so it's just sort of adding to a little bit of these watery emotional vibes. And then the Venus retrograde, which I wanted to highlight because Venus is retrograde. It's in a fire sign, and you're a fire sign too. Venus is retrograde in something called your 9th sign. So there is going to be a need to review, what do you value? Like, what do you value in the world? What do you value in your education? Do you value your point of view? Do you share your point of view? It's of course, it's to see how this is relevant for you, but the Aries energy in your chart talks about broadcast, sharing, inspiration, being an advocate. And as the sun gets there on March 20th, and even as Saturn gets there at the end of May, it's to put yourself more in the world after a time that has been more about a lot of inner work and inner soul searching. Virgo. So Mercury is your planet, and Mercury has just gone into Aries. So for you, Aries is something called your 8th sign. In astrology, there are 12 signs, and there are 12 domains of our life, 12 spaces, 12 houses. And each of those spaces, each of those domains talks about a different part of our life. Over the past few weeks, it's been about relationships. It's been about relationships probably even longer than that, because Saturn has been there since March 2023. With Mercury now in Aries, some of the narrative begins to change. It's the energy of you, because you're Virgo rising, now points towards your 8th. This is going to be a time, especially with the Mercury retrograde that's coming up next week, and even into the end of March and beyond, where it's some inner work, some inner soul searching. You're looking at themes of vulnerability, trust, power, controls, intimacy, especially if there's themes around relationship right now. It could be a look at power dynamics. It could be a look at more deeper psychological themes, for example. For some Virgos, this is a time to focus on money and income, material stability and security, the assets that you share with somebody. It could be the wealth that you are building for yourselves. It could be the debt that you're navigating. But Mercury retrograde doesn't mean that life stops for 3 weeks. It means that you need to trust your intuition more. Get out of your thinking, sometimes overly rational and analytical mind, Virgo, and so listen to your intuition more. And that's certainly, maybe that's where there's that introspection that's happening with this retrograde. Virgo, you are a week and change away from a lunar eclipse. This lunar eclipse is in your sign. Life could be a capital L life at the moment. I used Adrian Brody and his Oscar win as an example because he is a Virgo. He even has a moon in Virgo. Not a Virgo, he's a Virgo rising with moon in Virgo. So this is where, like, capital L life at the moment. So you're not an Oscar winner, but it's just sort of to see what is the story in your life, because it's going to get a little bit more dramatic, especially as we go into April. Libra. So Venus is your planet, and it just turned retrograde. So astrology runs on rulerships. It's like, who is your boss? You're like, I'm my boss, but that's the thing. Venus is your boss, Libra. So the energy of your sign or your rising sign is always being pulled along the zodiac by Venus, and what Venus is doing and who it's talking to and what planets. So Venus in Aries has been pulling the energy of you over to Aries. Aries is your relationship sign. So with Venus now retrograde as of March 1st, there's a lot of concentration of energy happening in relationships. There's relationships, both capital R relationships, meaning your partnerships, your marriage, your long-term relationships, and also relationships as a general whole. See, feel, listen to what is happening in your life right now. What's the story? What's the narrative? Because again, it's concentrating somewhat on relationships. So Venus will spend the next 40 days retrograde. And so whatever is happening right now, it might not be resolved. You might need to go back to it. You might need to figure things out from a different perspective. Venus will turn direct on April 12th. It'll do it in Pisces, but it will go back into Aries, I think in May, for example. So something is continuing to work its way out in the next couple of months, for example. So there's that. And then we also have Mercury turning retrograde in Aries. And so Mercury is more about how you communicate, how you think, how you listen. And maybe Mercury retrograde plus the Venus retrograde says that you need to either hear things that you haven't been listening to, or communicate differently, or go back to choices from the past or conversations from the past. And again, whatever is happening now may take a little bit of time to work its way through, because the planets are still tracing their way back. They'll go back to where they are now, but that will be in May, for example. So we have Mercury turning retrograde, but it is Pisces season. Pisces is the season for you to focus on your health, your wellness, the organization, projects, how you take care of yourself. You just had this Pisces new moon, but there's, Saturn's not that far away from the mix right now. And even with Venus going back to Pisces, I should have had that date in my head, but you may need to make some decisions. You may need to navigate something that, Saturn is about the bigger things in life. It's about duties and responsibilities. It's about, do I want this relationship? Do I not want this relationship? Or what are my partner and I trying to make together? Is there equity in my relationship? Or am I trying to control things, or vice versa? So with Saturn, it's again to sort of listen for the narrative that's happening in your life. Regardless, it's a season, meaning Pisces season, for you to clean things up, clean things out, to look at your health, your wellness, and even in advance of that eclipse next week, to figure what you want to let go of. 2 weeks to 2.5 weeks time from now, we're going to have a solar eclipse in Aries, which is relationships. That's your last eclipse in Aries for 9 years. And so again, it just sort of adds to this whole mix about relationships. And with Mars, because Mars is your relationship planet, it's in Cancer right now, which is your career sign. It might be something about responsibilities and duties, the future, and the roles that you are taking on within a relationship. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet, and while Mars is direct as of February 23rd, it's still kind of hanging out a little bit, not moving very much, but it is in Cancer. Cancer is a fellow water sign to you, and Scorpio Cancer is something called your 9th sign. This time for you, at least from January 6th all the way to April, I think it's 18th, is for you to think more philosophically. What do I believe in? What do I stand for? What do I think is true? Where do I want to orient my life? It could be, for some Scorpios, it's about communication and teaching. It could be about publishing. It could be about travel and planning long distance trips. But while Mars is sort of hanging out in this point in the sky, it's still roughly in an opposition to Pluto. So this is something, you had the Mars-Pluto opposition back in the beginning of November 2024. You had the second Mars opposition January 3rd. You will have one more Mars opposition on April 26th. The opposition to, I said Mars opposition, Pluto opposition. The Pluto opposition, it just means that something is really brewing, something is brewing inside of you, something needs to change, something needs to transform. It's not a new story at this point. You're sort of midway through the story. Keep going, Scorpio. You're good at changing, but my joke about Scorpio is that they'll change when they're good and ready. But Pluto is saying, now is the time. That said, Mars is in a water sign. It is picking up on emotions and feelings, and it is Pisces season. And Pisces season is also picking up on emotions and feelings. So for some Scorpios, this is about emotions and feelings. But what is water? When you are a water sign, water is about movement. Water is about transition and transport from one phase of your life to another. And so you may find, especially as long as Mars is in Cancer, that the first half of this year is a sense of transport and movement and transition. And it's preparing you for something new. I will add, because Venus is a relationship planet, Venus is retrograde. Venus is turning retrograde in a space that could talk about the service to other people in your life, needing to take care of people, but it also might be talking about relationship dynamics and are things equal? Again, it's for you to see how this is relevant to you, but I think that there's this bigger narrative in the chart about really getting back to you, back to what you want, and having to sort of renegotiate different things in your life accordingly. So Sagittarius. Sagittarius, so Jupiter is your planet, so the energy of your sign continues to point towards relationships. And so Jupiter has been in Gemini. Does it Cancer? Jupiter has been in Gemini. I'm kind of jumping ahead because Jupiter will go into Cancer on June 9th. So Jupiter is in Gemini. It's been in Gemini since the end of March. I feel like my brain is on Pisces these days. Anyway, so Jupiter in Gemini means that the focus, the sort of the top line focus of your life, one of them, because there's two of them, or three of them, but one of them continues to be relationships. It could be socialization. Like, what do you owe people? What are the relationships in your life? What are you building with people? Jupiter continues to be in a square to Saturn. It's not the easiest of energies because Saturn has very particular wants and needs. It's about building your life. It's about becoming an adult. It's about personal milestones, structures, accountability. And when you look back at the 2024 time frame, 2025 time frame, both those years, you will see something that's really trying to build and construct in your life. It's both about relationships, but it's also about home and family. And we just had that Pisces new moon on the 27th. And so the Pisces new moon has now brought that focus, which has already been focused the past couple of years, about home and family. Where is home and who is home? And for some Sagittariuses, it's a big time in your life. You are starting a relationship, you're starting a family, maybe a parent needs more attention, maybe you're making a big move, maybe it's more philosophical. It's like, where do I want to live? Where is home and where is family? And so with the Pisces new moon, it's sort of putting this front and center. Plus you have the Jupiter square to Saturn. And so there's a lot of push and that sort of natural alchemy of time and things happening in your life where something wants to build and to take place. It could be a decision about where you want to live. It could be a decision to move. It could be a decision to shift priorities. It could be the start of a relationship. We'll have to see. We are in eclipse season, Sagittarius, and so life is a bit interesting at the moment. Things are moving. People are sort of coming in and out of the wings of your life. And this is all to get you ready for the next big chapter of your life. I say Pisces. I keep saying Pisces. Sagittarius. So I told you my brain's on Pisces. So yes, Sagittarius. This is all to prepare you for the next big chapter of your life. And March is a critical month. It's a month where things are happening against the backdrop of the year as a whole. Capricorn, Saturn is your planet, and Saturn is working its way still through Pisces, but that's going to begin to change on May 24th. And so the hand of the clock, the energy of your sign, will begin to point towards home and family, and you will step into a chapter of your life that will even take you into 2028. Yes, you heard me correctly, where it's going to be like home will be a priority. But we're not there yet. We're not there at May yet. And with the energy in Pisces at the moment, it's sort of everything's building around you at the moment. I don't know if that makes sense. It's like, even though it's Pisces season, it could very well be your season because you've got all these planets that are dancing around that Saturn. And so we had the Pisces new moon, but we're going to have a lunar eclipse in 2 weeks, a little less than 2 weeks. So this lunar eclipse is going to be exactly opposite you. It's about the choices that you're making. It's about voice and communication. It's about sort of preparing yourself for the next big chapter of your life and needing to decide, is it a yes or a no, a left or a right, a this way or that way, an up or a down. And then you also have for some Capricorns, it is the focus on travel and exploration and even these sort of bigger philosophical questions. What do I believe in? What do I stand for? What do I think is true? There's a lot of movement in your astrology between Aries and Pisces, and this is even taking you into the middle of the year. So it's both about the endings and beginnings. It's about sort of preparing yourself for the next chapter of your life, but not fully in something and not fully out of something. Again, if that makes sense. You will have an eclipse in Aries on May 29th. So family, your living situation at home is going to be a big priority in 2025, especially once Saturn, you get to Aries on May 24th. That said, there are, you've got Venus now retrograde in Aries. Venus is your planet of career. It's your planet of responsibility. So maybe there's a lot of responsibilities in the home. Maybe you are taking more focus and priority on your living situation. We also have Mercury retrograde in Aries. Whatever is happening right now, Capricorn, it's like you don't fully have the answers, you don't fully have the stories, and it might take a couple of months for things to really work their way through. Then there's also Mars. Mars is in Cancer. Cancer is your relationship sign, so it's kind of hitting on a lot of the big areas of your life. So life might be capital L life at the moment. Aquarius. So Saturn is your planet, and Saturn is still in Pisces. And so even though it's not your season right now, it's Pisces season, in a way you're kind of in the mix at the moment, because we are about a week and change away from a lunar eclipse, and that lunar eclipse will be opposite that Saturn. So you're kind of getting roped into this eclipse energy, even though you're not a Virgo or a Pisces. And this eclipse will be in Virgo. This is right now, it could be talking about money and income, assets, property, the things that you own, the things that you value. It could be about planning for the future. It could be about finances. It could be about estate planning, for example. But there's something that's happening in two signs, the 2nd and the 8th, that for some Aquariuses, it is very financial. For some Aquariuses, the impending lunar eclipse is bringing up a lot of emotions. Am I safe? Do I have enough? Maybe even deeper themes about intimacy, power, and even vulnerability. This lunar eclipse, again, is opposite you. So it could mean that there are pivotal events that are happening in your life in March. Look to see what's happening, of course, next week, but I would even look to see what's happening as we get to the first quarter moon around Wednesday or Thursday. There's something about that time that is linking you to the eclipse to come in a week. We also have Venus now. It's retrograde. Venus is your planet of home and family, roots, foundation. It's in a place, Aries for you, that says there's just a lot of movement at the moment. That movement could be literal. You got places to go, people to see. Maybe you're traveling a lot. Maybe you're not spending time at home. Maybe you're running around the neighborhood. And for some, it's not about movement. It's needing to reevaluate things, especially reevaluating themes around family and home and value and, about the future and what you want to sort of put your focus on. So it's a big time for you, Aquarius, even though these eclipses are not in your sign. In a way, it's kind of as if they are. And so life in March might be a bit capital L life, especially around that lunar eclipse to come next week. Finally, Pisces. So Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter is in something called your 4th sign. So it is Pisces season for all of us. So we're kind of living, collectively speaking, we're living your time. Since May, the time for Pisces has been to focus on family, to focus on home. Of course, all of you are different Pisces or Pisces rising, but it is a time to really create roots, to create stability, to create foundations. And Jupiter, again, still in the square to Saturn. And it says that this is a time in your life, certainly the second half of 2024, the first half of 2025, to make things more concrete, to make things more stable. Maybe a lot is being asked of you. Certainly with Saturn and Pisces, things have been asked of you. A lot's been asked of you the past couple of years. Now we have eclipses, and so we will have a lunar eclipse next week on the March 14th, and so that lunar eclipse is in your sign of relationship and connection, and that lunar eclipse is pinging off of Saturn and Pisces. And it's a bit capital L life at the moment. Maybe you're planning a move. Maybe you're making changes in your life. Maybe it's about relationships. Maybe it's about changes. Maybe you're starting a relationship. Maybe you're ending a relationship. But it is a time where it could also be about career and direction in the future. And maybe just to go back to that Jupiter, it's to make sure that you're really creating a base and foundation for yourself, because it has been a lot of movement, it has been a lot of changes, and there will continue to be eclipses in Virgo, Pisces, especially the eclipses in September. Those are the eclipses for you to really watch. And it's good to make sure that you're getting what you need, that you have a sense of refuge, that you're being supported, because that's really going to sustain you as you navigate the rest of 2025 and even go into 2026. Oh, I should also add that Mercury, because Mercury is a major planet for you, it is in your second sign of money and income. So there could be financial themes as you go into the rest of March, and Mercury will turn retrograde next week. And if it's not financial, it's really what you value, what's important to you, Pisces, for example. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology of this week, March 3rd through 9th of 2025. I just feel so Piscean at the moment. Maybe you feel Piscean too. I'm feeling Piscean. It's just a time for us to make sure that we're cultivating our inner lives, the richness of our inner lives, getting rest, listening to our intuition. But I think to take a leaf out of Virgo in that Virgo eclipse, not losing our connection to the earth. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology of March 3rd through 9th. Don't forget to register for my webinar, where I will do a deeper look at eclipses and how they are the engine of time, and certainly they are moving the hands of the clock in your personal life and what they mean for you. And especially if you are a Virgo, Pisces, Sag, or Gemini, these are big eclipses for you. And even the conclusion of the eclipses that we were having the past couple or year and a half in Libra and Aries, because we will have that last eclipse on the 29th in Aries. So it's a big time. I'm sure we will have lots to talk about next week. And until then, take care. Be well. Bye-bye.